Today's video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Welcome to r/AmITheButthole, where a 16-year-old girl refuses to be her father's replacement wife. Am I the butthole for telling my dad that I'm not his replacement wife? I'm a 16-year-old girl, and my mom passed away recently. My brother, who's 14, and my dad are so devastated by this tragic loss, and we're struggling. I've basically found myself handling all the chores and work around the house. My brother is too traumatized. He hasn't been talking since the funeral, and my dad hasn't been lifting a finger to do a single thing. He started making requests, from cleaning the messy living room, to picking up dirty laundry, to doing dishes, cooking and ordering food, walking the dogs, vacuuming, doing repairs, mowing the lawn, washing the car, etc. My brother has stopped doing his chores, and I'm getting so exhausted. Mom used to do all the chores, and I used to help, but I have school and after-school commitments. And my dad keeps negatively commenting on how I get things done, and he compares me to my mom, like how long it takes me to make breakfast, etc. Yesterday, he woke me up at 6 a.m., and even though he told me to skip school, he wanted me to make him breakfast. I made some scrambled eggs and prepared some other dishes, and then went to wake up my brother. I set the table, and once my dad sat down, he looked at the scrambled eggs and said, "What is this? This isn't the right way to make scrambled eggs. Your mother used to make perfect scrambled eggs. Did you not learn anything from her at all? How are we supposed to survive if you can't even properly make scrambled eggs?" He looked at my brother and said, "We're doomed." I snapped and loudly told him that I am not his replacement wife, and he can't expect me to do all these chores for him. He looked at me stunned, and my brother left the room. My dad started telling me how cruel and insensitive I was, and how out of line I was. I replied that I was too tired to make the perfect scrambled eggs, and maybe if he as a parent had tried to learn something, then we wouldn't be suffering right now. My dad just stood up and walked out. My aunt came to visit, and when I told her what happened, she went off on me, saying that I should have never said that to my grieving dad, and I should be ashamed of myself for talking to him like that. Am I the butthole? Wow, OP, your family is mega sexist. It's okay for your dad to sit around the house and grieve and do nothing. It's okay for your brother to sit around the house and grieve and do nothing. But it's not okay for you to sit around the house and grieve and do nothing? No, apparently, just because you're the woman in the family, you have to clean, cook, and do all the other chores despite the fact that you also lost your mother. In my opinion, parents who force their kids to take on the role of adults just so the family can function are straight up abusing their children. This is emotional abuse, OP, plain and simple. Your father is the parent, he's the adult in the situation. It's his responsibility to keep the family functioning, to keep the house running, to keep you guys fed, to make sure you go to school, and instead he's shoving that all over to you like it's your responsibility? No. OP, you are completely not the butthole here, but unfortunately it sounds like your entire family is too sexist to see that. OP, I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes. I'm giving your aunt 2 out of 5 buttholes. I'm giving your brother 2 out of 5 buttholes, and I'm giving your father 5 out of 5 buttholes. Am I the butthole for getting mad at my wife because she caused me to fail an important interview? I'm a 27-year-old male, and I've been married to my wife, who's 24, for 3 years. She's 6 months pregnant. I've been looking for a job with better pay since my wife said that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom after birth. Today, I had an interview for a position at a very good IT company that would pay me triple my current salary. The company was taking a lot of measures to prevent malpractice. For example, I wasn't even allowed to look off screen, and the test was conducted on an online platform. I had told my wife numerous times before the exam started about the strict rules that I had to follow. Just 15 minutes after my test started, my wife started knocking on my study door and calling out my name, saying that she wanted me to open a jar. I ignored her because I would be disqualified from the interview if I looked anywhere else or spoke. I figured that she would get the hint that I couldn't talk. But she didn't. She yelled at me, calling me a butthole, and then called her friends on speakerphone. It didn't stop with the phone calls. She also played loud music for her online dance yoga class. It was extremely distracting, and I made a lot of mistakes in the exam. It was a multiple choice test, so I got the results immediately, and as expected, I failed miserably. I was livid at my wife. This is the 5th interview that she's ruined like this. I told her that I give up on trying to make her life easier and that I'm not ready to go looking for any more jobs since she doesn't even want to maintain silence during important interviews. I told her to start working again after the birth and that I'm okay paying for a nanny/babysitter. She said that I'm being unreasonable to expect perfect silence at home. Am I the butthole? Okay, OP, I am absolutely thrilled to come across this story because what happened with you and your wife is extremely similar to what happened to me and my wife, with the critical difference is that my wife isn't a giant butthole like your wife is. So obviously, I have a YouTube channel and a podcast, and I'm recording audio for people to listen to. And so obviously, I need a certain level of silence in the home. I have really advanced, expensive, high-quality audio equipment, so if the house is noisy, my microphone will pick that up and you guys will be able to hear it. I record in the basement of my home, and my wife is on the ground level, the floor above me, or on the second floor. Also, as you may know, my wife gave birth earlier this year, so since then she's been a stay-at-home mom. And yeah, there has been friction. There have been times where I'm like, hey, I really need you to stop what you're doing because I'm trying to record. I can't record anything if you're cooking or walking around or vacuuming. I just have to stop and wait for you to finish. And this is my job. It's supporting me. It's supporting my wife. So I have to be able to do this. This is non-negotiable. And my wife, because she's logical and not a butthole and she cares about me, she completely understands. And if I have to record, she goes upstairs or she sits quietly on the sofa and watches the TV at a very low volume or just scrolls her phone or just chills. There's a bunch of things that you can do in your own home as a mom or as a pregnant lady that doesn't involve making the house super noisy. And at the same time, my wife also has chores to do while I'm working. She has to, cook and take care of the baby. So we worked out a system where there are times where she's allowed to be noisy and I do other work that isn't recording. I'll make YouTube thumbnails or upload videos and do the SEO stuff. There's a bunch of stuff I can do that isn't recording, but is still important to work. You see, OP, this is a normal, healthy, reasonable way to solve this problem. You need quiet time. She needs noisy time. The solution isn't for her to be like, oh, well, you can't expect perfect silence 24/7. No, of course not. But it is reasonable to expect perfect silence from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. when you're trying to take an online test. OP, your wife is a major butthole here. She is extremely disrespectful. I'm giving her 3 out of 5 buttholes because she clearly doesn't respect you. OP, I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes. It is very reasonable for you to get upset at your wife here. However, you said that this is the 5th interview that she's ruined. At some point, OP, part of this blame comes to you. Obviously, she's the one who's doing things wrong, right? She's the problem person. But if she's messed up interview 1, then interview 2, then interview 3, then interview 4, then you have this 5th interview. I don't know why on earth you ever expected your wife to suddenly be cooperative on this 5th interview and be completely silenced. That is insane to me, OP. What you obviously should have done was found some other place where you could have taken this interview, maybe your friend's place or a coffee shop if they would have allowed it. Or if necessary, you could have just rented an office suite for a day. It would have been expensive, but at least you wouldn't have to worry about your wife ruining your interview. And I'm not saying this to blame you, because I totally understand that the wife is the problem here. What else did you expect, man? What else could you have possibly expected except your wife being disrespectful for the 5th consecutive time? So my heart really goes out to you, OP, but the relationship you have with your wife is not based on respect. Either she doesn't respect you, or she's actively sabotaging your interviews. I'm not sure which. Am I the butthole for telling my wife to stop being so jealous of my friend's fiancé? I'm a 36-year-old male, and my 35-year-old wife and I are good friends with another couple, my best friend Matt, who's 36, and his fiancée Rachel, who's 24. Rachel models and is very attractive. My wife is less conventionally attractive, but I fell in love with her for her humor and good spirit, which I personally find more attractive than good looks. Recently, I've noticed my wife making a lot of comments about Rachel, calling her an airhead and just being kind of mean. When my wife makes these comments in private, I'm able to stand up for Rachel, but when they're made in public, I obviously don't want to embarrass my wife by calling her out. My wife and I went on a trip with Matt and Rachel last week, which we'd been planning for a while and we're really looking forward to. At dinner one night, my wife made a really mean comment after we started talking about the economy. She said, "Don't worry, Rachel, you can join in the conversation once the smart people are done talking." My wife was the only person who laughed. I was completely embarrassed, and once we were alone, I told my wife that she'd been really rude, and I was ashamed of her. I told her she needs to stop making nasty comments, and she agreed. However, the next night we all went out to a bar. Rachel was getting a lot of attention from the guys there who were sending over drinks. My wife was looking visibly annoyed that she wasn't receiving the same attention, so I tried to lift her spirits by paying for all her drinks and making a fuss over her. One guy came over and said that Rachel looks just like the model Zendaya. My wife let out a massive laugh and said, "You mean to say Whoopi Goldberg?" I turned to my wife and straight up said, "You really are jealous, aren't you?" She looked hurt, but she didn't have time to respond because Rachel had left the table in tears. I followed Matt, and I told Rachel that I was so sorry for my wife's words and that I was ashamed of her behavior. When I reunited with my wife, she told me I was horrible for calling her jealous in front of everyone and embarrassing her. I told her straight up that she was just jealous of Rachel because Rachel is more attractive than her. I realize in hindsight that this was a really heavy thing to say, and I can see why she would be hurt by it. However, I stand by the fact that it was said in anger. Am I the butthole? Yeah, OP, I think I'd say you're not the butthole here. Your wife is very obviously jealous, and she's trying to take it out on Rachel. So it's okay for your wife to embarrass Rachel, but it's not okay for people to embarrass your wife. So OP, I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes, and I'm giving your wife 2 out of 5 buttholes. She really needs to get over her jealousy problem. Am I the butthole for no longer letting my boyfriend eat what I cook after he raided my food in front of my family? I'm 25, and my boyfriend Jerry, who's 31, has a culinary art diploma. He works 2 jobs related to his field, one as a chef and the other as a cooking instructor. We've been dating for almost 16 months now, by the way. I had no experience in cooking, but he encouraged me to learn and help my skills improve so much, even though he has a habit of rating every meal I cook, which I find a bit rude. For example, he'll say, "This dish gets 7 out of 10, this dish gets 8.3 out of 10. This dish would have gotten 9 out of 10 if the sauce wasn't so salty," etc. I didn't feel great with him rating my food no matter the score, but he says he's helping me improve, so... My family came over to visit, and I wanted to cook their favorite meals. Jerry sat with my parents and chatted until the food was ready. He started eating, and he kept making comments about my choice of meals. Once he put his fork down, he cleared his throat and literally started rating every dish I made by giving me 7 out of 10 for this, 4.8 out of 10 for this, and 6 out of 10 for that. My family was so confused, and I was floored. I felt awful because he just kept giving me advice on how to improve my score next time. He kept a straight face while doing it. It was awkward, just awkward the entire evening. We had a huge argument after my family left, and I told Jerry that he acted poorly and embarrassed me when he started rating my food in front of my family. I told him that I'm not going to let him eat anything that I cook anymore. He said that I was overreacting and claimed that what he was doing is just constructive criticism and I shouldn't take it personally since he's just used to rating his students' work. I said that I'm not his damn student and he's not Gordon Ramsay to be heavily putting down my efforts in front of my family. He got offended and said my reaction was way over the top because he was just giving constructive criticism to make me progress, and he said he was just trying to help. He said that Gordon Ramsay comment was totally uncalled for and just a low blow to his abilities as a respectable chef with a respectable career. He then asked what made me think it was okay to come at him like that over a few ratings. He said that he was hurt and went to stay with a friend for the night, probably expecting an apology from me. Am I the butthole? OP, this is very easy to solve. When he comes back, just apologize, act very, very sad, and then the next time you're passionately hugging, just give him a rating afterwards. Well, I think I'd have to give you 4 out of 10. You put in a lot of effort, but it just didn't last long enough for me. Also, the facial expressions you were making the whole time were kind of a turnoff, so that lost you a few points. Then when he gets upset, "What's wrong, sweetie? I thought that you liked constructive criticism. I just want to help you improve." No, jokes aside, your boyfriend is obviously being a butthole here. There's a huge difference between helping someone improve and insulting them in front of their family. If he wanted to critique your cooking, which fine, okay, I mean, he's a cook, he's trying to help you, that's reasonable. Why does he have to do that in front of your entire family, insulting you in front of your mother, your father, your siblings? That's just extremely disrespectful. He could have just waited till your family left and then said, hey, it was nice seeing your family, but would you like your ratings on your dishes now? Because you can do this better, that better, blah, blah, blah. Like, why make a big show out of it, of criticizing a family member like that? It's just really, really weird, really out of touch. I think what's really going on here is that this is some kind of like power play. This guy is obviously a professional. He knows what he's doing. He's very confident in his abilities. So yeah, he's helping you, but I think that he likes the difference between him and you because it gives him a feeling of superiority. It gives him a feeling of control. And so he just enjoys like putting you down. I think he likes it. Am I the butthole for proving that I'm the owner of my own home? I'm a 20-year-old woman, and I was fortunate enough to buy a house. For it only costing $15,000, I have to say it's quite nice. It didn't really need much work besides a new roof, and the cabinets needed to be replaced, but my dad is a carpenter, so that didn't really matter much. The previous owner was an older man who unfortunately passed away after living in this house for a long time. I finally got to move in 2 months ago. It's been fun making it on my own, but it's taken some time to get used to living alone. 3 weeks after moving in, I was outside clearing out a few places in my yard to plant a garden and flowers in the spring. I live in the Midwest, so I wanted to get this done before the ground freezes. Aha, OP, I was wondering how you managed to get a house for $15,000, but now I see it's because you live in the Midwest, so that all makes sense now. My next door neighbor, I'll call her Jane, who's in her 50s, came out and introduced herself. I explained that I just moved in and I was preparing my yard for spring. She said it was nice that someone was doing work for the old man and gave me a spiel about how it's a quiet neighborhood and I shouldn't have parties. I told her that I don't throw parties, but I was planning on hosting a housewarming and Thanksgiving party soon. She said that it was weird to throw a housewarming party when I was just renting. I told her I own the house. She didn't believe me and she went home. Last week I was out painting my front door. She stormed over, yelling that I'd better have permission to paint someone else's house. I again told her that I own this home. She started yelling that I was too young to buy a house and that she was contacting my landlord. I told her to stop being a busybody and leave me alone. She started demanding proof. I told her it was none of her business and to get off my property. She walked to the edge of her yard and called the cops, saying that I was a squatter. When the cops showed up, I showed them my paperwork and I asked them to trespass Jane from my home. Jane is still angry. I was talking to my dad the next day asking what I should do. He said that I was the butthole for making enemies with my neighbors and I should have just shown her proof to put her mind to rest. I don't feel like I was in the wrong, but my dad thinks that I was. Am I the butthole? OP, your dad is 100% incorrect here. He is completely off the mark. So she comes over to your yard and demands to see proof that you own the house. Not only is that completely not her business, but who's to say that it stops there? What if she thinks that you have, someone tied up in your basement and she wants to go see your basement? What if she says that her dog or her cat ran into your house and she wants to go inside and check? Like, you can't just be like, oh, of course, neighbor, whatever you want. I don't want to be your enemy. No, this is your house. This is your property. You have a right to privacy. Also, your dad seems to be operating under the completely mistaken assumption that we're dealing with a reasonable person here. I think that, realistically, OP, your neighbor would have turned into your enemy no matter what you did. She sounds like a total Karen, and believe me when I tell you that the harassment is not going to stop. I strongly encourage you to buy security cameras that cover your entire property, OP, because your neighbor will continue to harass you. OP, I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes. You're just trying to live your best life. I'm giving your dad 1 out of 5 buttholes because he's just clueless. I'm giving your neighbor 3 out of 5 buttholes because she's a nosy, entitled Karen. Her logic doesn't even make sense. Like, yeah, it's uncommon for a 20-year-old to own a house, but in the Midwest, where property prices are like sometimes in the 5-figure range, that's completely reasonable. Especially when you've got situations where parents buy their kids' houses. It's not unheard of. It's not common, sure, but like, it happens all the time. It happens every day. So why is she completely incapable of wrapping her head around the idea of a 20-year-old owning a house? Okay, I'm going to talk about today's sponsor, ExpressVPN, and why I honestly think that everybody should use a VPN. Nowadays, it seems like your entire life is online. Email, chat conversations, shopping history, private photos, late night video searches. Don't you want your data to be protected? ExpressVPN protects your data by making all your data anonymous before it hits the internet. Without a VPN, your internet service provider can see every site you visit online, and websites can sell your data to who knows who else. Protect your privacy, your search history, and your data with ExpressVPN. And then on top of it just being a good idea, ExpressVPN also unlocks extra shows on streaming platforms like Netflix, so it's just a win-win. If a TV show isn't available in your location, you can use ExpressVPN to set your location to a region where the show is unlocked and unlock the content. That's why I literally use ExpressVPN every day. If you want to try it out, you can get 3 months free by going to expressvpn.com/r/. That was r/AmITheButthole, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.